Belgium.
Welcome, everyone. Good morning. We're happy to have you at the Northern Virginia Baha'i Center Sunday morning program. Please remember that the program is being recorded and it will be made available through the Nova Baha'i Center website. At this time, we'd like to remind you that you've been muted to reduce the audio feedback, but we invite you to enable your camera so the speaker can see you. We'd also like to remind you that any public messages in the chat box will be visible on the recording. We will now begin with prayers and devotions.
Oh my God, oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants. Oh my God, oh my God, reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law, and abide in thy law. Help them, oh God, in their endeavor, and grant them strength to serve thee. Oh God, oh God, lead them not to themselves, guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge. Cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord, and their Lord, and their Lord. Oh my God, oh my God.
Have patience, wait but do not sit idle. Work while you're waiting, smile when you're wearied with monotony. Continue your journey to the end. The bright day is coming, the bright day is coming. Continue your journey to the end. The bright day is coming, the bright day is coming. Be firm while everything around unshaken. Be joyous while the ugly face of despair grins at you. Continue your journey to the end. The bright day is coming. The bright day is coming. Continue your journey to the end. The bright day is coming. 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 Oh,
Our speaker today is Della. Della is considered an authority on Queen Marie of Romania, having spent about a decade researching her life both in the Holy Land and in Romania. Specifically, the last years when the Queen became acquainted with and enthusiastically embraced the newest world religion, the Baha'i faith. Della has 2 published books, Her Eternal Crown, Queen Marie and the Baha'i Faith, and an abridged version of this story published in Romanian, soon to be available in English, entitled Queen Marie, an Instrument in Greater Hands. And now we will turn it over to Della.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to see you all. There's a lot of faces I don't know, but there are also quite a number of friends from around the world. Some of the more exotic places are Romania, Croatia, and Cyprus. So I'm delighted to see you all. And I am always very happy to share the story of Queen Marie of Romania, who has a very unique position in the Baha'i history. So I will begin by sharing my screen. So this presentation is based on the book that I wrote entitled Her Eternal Crown, Queen Marie of Romania and the Baha'i Faith. I do presentations like this with images because I find it's more interesting for people, especially those who have read the book. So they get sort of a visual stimulus about this amazing story. So let me begin. Princess Marie was the granddaughter of Queen Victoria, whom most people know about. Queen Victoria was known as Her Majesty Victoria by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, Queen Defender of the Faith, Empress of India. And Baha'u'llah addressed several of the rulers at the time that he lived. Baha'u'llah being the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith. And in his letter to Queen Victoria, he made the following statement. O Queen in London, we make mention of thee for the sake of God. I'm trying to move something so that I can see. Okay. We make mention of thee for the sake of God and desire that thy name be exalted through thy remembrance of God, the creator of earth and heaven. He verily is witness unto that which I say. We have been informed that thou hast forbidden the trading in slaves, both men and women. This verily is what God hath enjoined in this wondrous revelation. God hath truly destined a reward for thee because of this. He verily will pay the doer of good his due recompense, wert thou to follow what hath been sent unto thee by him who is the all-knowing, the all-informed. These tablets to the kings and rulers of the time are comprised in a book entitled The Summons of the Lord of Hosts, which can be found online. If you search for Baha'i writings, and you will find the list of all of the writings of Baha'u'llah. This is the genealogy on Queen Marie's father's side. So you have Victoria and Albert, and they had two sons, Edward, who became King Edward VII, and Alfred, who was Queen Marie's father. Alfred married Marie, who was the daughter of Tsar Alexander II of Russia, and they had they had more than 5 children. They're not shown here, but let's see, 9 children, Victoria and Albert. And Alfred and Marie had 5, 2, 4, 5. I think they had 6 children. Marie was the second oldest. So the story begins with Queen Victoria marrying Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. This is a photograph of their marriage. They were married on the 10th of February, 1840. So that would have been 4 years before the beginning of the Baha'i faith. This is a photograph of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert with their 9 children. And Marie's father would be the young man to Queen Victoria's left. This was the Prince Alfred, Duke of Edinburgh. And Marie was also the granddaughter, as I said, of Tsar Alexander II of Russia. Here he is. He was known as His Imperial Majesty, the Emperor and Autocrat of all the Russias. He was likewise addressed by Baha'u'llah in another tablet, which can be found in the Summons of the Lord of Hosts. And Baha'u'llah says to him, O Tsar of Russia, whilst I lay chained and fettered in the prison, one of thy ministers extended me his aid. Wherefore hath God ordained for thee a station which the knowledge of none can comprehend except his knowledge. Beware lest thou barter away this sublime station. Thy Lord verily doeth what he willeth. What he pleaseth will God abrogate or confirm, and with him is the knowledge of all things in a guarded tablet. So I will mention that Queen Victoria and Tsar Alexander were the only ones who received in their tablets from Baha'u'llah praise for certain things that they did or had knowledge of, which Baha'u'llah approved of. This is the genealogy on the Russian side. So Alexander II married Marie, and they had 6 children. Marie was known as the Grand Duchess of Russia. And this is a photograph of Tsar Alexander II of Russia with his family. And Marie is the young woman who is resting on her elbow behind her parents in the middle. This is young Princess Maria Alexandrovna with her father, Tsar Alexander II. And this was her on her wedding day on the 23rd of January, 1874. They were married at the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. It was an arranged marriage. There had been many young princesses considered to marry Prince Albert, but the decision was made for political reasons to marry Albert to Marie. Out of this marriage came Marie, Princess Marie. Here are her parents on the right with Tsar Alexander and Marie's brother, Alexei Alexandrovich. And here's the young married couple. So to give you a little bit of background about Romania during that time, it was a relatively small country bordered by Bulgaria, Serbia, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which included Transylvania, Ukraine, and what was then known as Bessarabia, and the Black Sea. I mentioned that it was a small country because Queen Marie was instrumental in increasing the size of the country after World War I. So this is Romania in 1893 when Marie arrived. When Marie arrived, King Carol was the king. He was the uncle of Prince Ferdinand, to whom Marie was betrothed. Prince Karl of Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen was invited to come to Romania in 1866 to be installed on the Romanian throne. He Romanized his name to Carol and declared himself king in May 1881. He and his wife had one daughter who died in childhood, and so the heir was chosen from among King Carol's nephews. Here is Prince Carol of Romania, who married Princess Elizabeth of Wied, a German princess, in 1869. And what's interesting is that Princess Elizabeth of Wied was one of the princesses that was considered for marriage to Queen Marie's father. So the story would have been very different if that had happened. But she ended up marrying Prince Carol. This is Leopold, Prince of Hohenzollern, brother of Prince Karl of Romania, who renounced his right to the Romanian throne in favor of his sons. His eldest son, William, did not want to become Prince of Romania, so this responsibility fell in 1886 to Prince Ferdinand, nephew of German-born Romanian King Carol. And Ferdinand would wait until 1886 to ascend to the throne, and then this time he had to find a wife and carry on the line of succession. Marie's family and childhood. She was born at Eastwell House near Ashford. And this was the birth announcement in the Times of London. This is a photograph of the Duke and Duchess with their eldest daughter, Maria Alexandra Victoria, Princess of Edinburgh, also known as Missy. A series of photographs of Marie as a child, here with her 3 older siblings. Alfred was the oldest child. Marie is on the right. Victoria Melita is on the left, and the little girl in the front is Alexandra. This is Marie reading. She was a voracious reader and writer. Here she is with her father and her older brother. This is a picture taken in Malta. Her father was stationed with the Royal Navy in Malta. And there's an interesting story that has to do with the Baha'i faith connected to their stay in Malta, which I will get to later on in the presentation. Here are some of the Edinburgh children in their games. A portrait of the Duke and Duchess with their 2 eldest children. Here's Princess Marie, holding a photograph of her grandmother, Queen Victoria. (1837). She's written that on her dress. And here is Queen Marie on the left with 2 of her sisters. This is Prince Ferdinand Victor Albert Meinrad of Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen. He was born in Germany. Princess Maria of Edinburgh with her 5 children. Marie in a play with her sister. Here's another photograph of Princess Marie, also taken in Malta. She talks about this period as being one of the happiest times. It was between 1888 and 1889, and it was here that she spent much time with her cousin, Prince George of Wales, who became the future King George V. Here's a photograph of them. Queen Marie is the one sitting on the right, and her cousin, George, who became king, is the furthest to the right. Here she is with cousin George, the Prince of Wales, and there was expectation that the 2 of them would marry. And it's very interesting that in the book, the biography that was written by Hanna Pakula called gosh, the name escapes me right now. Anyway, I'll think of it. But Hanna Pakula mentions at one point that if Princess Marie had married George, she would have become Queen of the United Kingdom. A position that was already very well established, and she would not probably have had much of a role, a unique role as she did in Romania, because she became the second queen in Romania, and she was able really to assist her husband in shaping the kingdom and its many policies. So she had a much greater role in Romania than she would have had in her native country. The reason they did not get married was that Marie, the mother, did not like the British very much, even though she was married to a British prince. And so she did everything in her power to prevent this from happening. So Marie became wife of Crown Prince Ferdinand of Romania, who later became King Ferdinand of Romania. And she became Queen of Romania and the mother of Carol, Elisabeta, Marie, Nicholas, Ileana, and Mircea. This is Marie at the time of her marriage. Here she is at her engagement to Ferdinand in 1982. This was the official marriage announcement. They were married on January 10th, 1893. And here is a drawing of their marriage. The beautiful bride. And some pictures of the prince and princess. And it's lovely to see them having a nice, enjoyable moment on skates in the right-hand picture. Marie is on the left-hand side of this photograph. Her cousin, the Tsar of Russia, Nicholas, is the man in the foreground. And Marie was pregnant here with her first child. Here is the young couple with their firstborn, Prince Carol. He came into this world on the 15th of October, 1893. Here's Marie with her first two children, Carol and Elisabeta. And here with their first four children, which included Marie and Nicholas, the young boy on her lap. And on the right, the prince and princess are with King Carol and his wife, Elizabeth of Wied. And their last two children, Ileana and Mircea, little Mircea, who looks like he was very mischievous and was much loved by his mother, unfortunately died in 1916 at the age of 3 of typhoid fever. Here's one of the last photographs of the royal couple, King Carol I and his wife, Queen Elizabeth, and he died at the end of 1914. Queen Marie was an avid horse rider. And this is the couple after they became king and queen of Romania. Their coronation did not happen until the 15th of October, 1922, because of the First World War. Here's a photograph of their coronation. And here is King Ferdinand with his first grandson, Prince Michael, who later became King Michael. A portrait done by the famous Hungarian portraitist Philip de Laszlo of Queen Marie. A variety of photographs showing Marie in different outfits. Here she's wearing a beautiful Romanian blouse, and she often wore head coverings. She loved Romania very much and its people, even though when she arrived, she found it quite difficult to live in a country that was very different than her home country. Here's one of my favorite photographs of Queen Marie writing. I can just imagine her writing all of her letters to Shoghi Effendi, to Martha Root. She kept a diary religiously every day, and I had the great fortune of reading much of her diary in Bucharest, kept in the state archives. Here she is at Bran Castle. It's a beautiful castle in central Romania, which now belongs to her grandson, Archduke Dominic of Habsburg, who I'm very happy to say is a very good friend of mine. Here's Queen Marie with some children, Romanian children, probably orphans. And with some gypsies or Roma. She was very much beloved by the Romanian people. And she was very active in helping the war wounded throughout this First World War, and also brought her children to assist. She did not have medical skills, but she came, she read to them, she brought them gifts, she tried to encourage them, bring them hope, and she was really considered as a mother figure to many of these soldiers. Here's a photograph of Queen Marie with the president of France, Georges Clemenceau. And I mentioned at the beginning that Queen Marie was instrumental in getting the country of Romania enlarged. She was asked by the Romanian government to go as an unofficial representative of the country to the Paris Peace Conference in 1919 and to plead the case for Romania. And that was when Romania was able to get Transylvania added to its territory and certain parts along the border with Ukraine, Bessarabia, and along the Black Sea. Here's one of the last photographs of Queen Marie with Prince Ferdinand. And here's the royal couple with King George V and Queen Mary in London. Queen Marie was an avid driver, and this is her driver's license. My good friend, Dr. Vara Enayati, who was one of the first Baha'is to go as a young student to Romania in 1983, was able to purchase this driver's license from an antiquities dealer. And it's such a fun document. So King Ferdinand and Queen Marie of Romania's second daughter, also known as Marie, married King Alexander of Yugoslavia. And here they are visiting with Alexander and Marie. And on the right are the Duke and Duchess of York. The Duke became King George VI and his wife, Queen Elizabeth. They're the parents of the current Queen Elizabeth. And the baby is Peter, who became king of Yugoslavia after his father was assassinated in Marseille. A beautiful photograph of Queen Marie. And King Ferdinand. I believe this is the last photograph, official photograph that was taken of him before his passing. Here is the procession at his funeral, and Marie and her daughter looking down over the balcony as the coffin was removed from Pelishor Castle in Sinaia. Now we move to the Baha'i story that is linked to Queen Marie. Abdul Baha, who is the son of the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, wrote a letter on the 10th of January, 1919 to Martha Root. In it, he says to her, "My hope from the blessings of His Holiness Baha'u'llah is that thou mayest forget rest and composure, and like unto a swift flying bird, thou mayest reproduce the melody of the kingdom and engage in songs and music in the best of tunes. All ears are alert for the summons to the most great peace. It is therefore better for thee to travel now around the world, if this is conveniently possible, and roar out the call of the divine kingdom. Thou shalt witness great results and extraordinary confirmations." For those of you who are attending today who might not be Baha'is, you'll see that the language of Abdul Baha was very, very flowery, and I don't think that Martha Root sang, But what he was really telling her was that she should go around the world and share the message of Baha'u'llah. And what is so extraordinary is that he assures her at the end that if she does this, she will have great results and extraordinary confirmations. And she really did. There are some wonderful biographies about Martha Root, who was an American journalist who became a Baha'i and was dedicated throughout her life to traveling around the world. She visited almost every country in the world, and she was a fearless teacher of the healing message of Baha'u'llah. This was Martha Root's passport photograph. And I have a few photographs that show some of the countries that she visited, some of the countries and some of the friends. Here is Australia. Martha Root is in the front middle. Here she is in Iraq, in Germany. Some of you may recognize Hand of the Cause of God, Grossman and his wife on the left. Here in Tabriz, so this was an all women's gathering because in those days women and men met separately. Here is Martha Root with a men's gathering in Tehran, Iran. And a Baha'i by the name of Marzieh Gale, who was also a writer, expresses a little bit about Martha's travels. She says, and so on and on she traveled, not young or strong, not beautiful, not rich, alone and more than once in terrible danger, on and on for 20 years. She had begun these journeys in response to Abdu'l-Baha's mandate to America, issued in his tablets of the Divine Plan. That was 1919. She was the first to arise, and she carried on with her work until far from home she stumbled and fell in her tracks. Martha Root passed away in Hawaii and is buried on that island. Here's Martha in Japan, in Egypt, in India, in Bulgaria, and in the Holy Land. Baha'u'llah, in his most great book, known in Arabic as the Kitab-i-Aqdas, says, how great the blessedness that awaiteth the king who will arise to aid my cause in my kingdom, who will detach himself from all else but me. Such a king is numbered with the companions of the Crimson Ark, the ark which God hath prepared for the people of Baha. All must glorify his name, must reverence his station, and aid him to unlock the cities with the keys of my name, the omnipotent protector of all that inhabit the visible and invisible kingdoms. Such a king is the very eye of mankind, the luminous ornament on the brow of creation, the fountainhead of blessings unto the whole world. Offer up, O people of Baha, your substance, nay, your very lives for his assistance. When you read the writings of Baha'u'llah, you will see that he often refers to a gender, mostly male, but in this particular passage, the reference to king is also valid for queen. So we believe that this applies to Queen Marie. The widow, the wife of Shoghi Effendi, who was the guardian of the Baha'i faith, with whom Queen Marie corresponded, wrote this about Shoghi Effendi, her husband. From the inception of Shoghi Effendi's ministry, this is actually written about Martha Root by Ruhia Rabbani. From the inception of Shoghi Effendi's ministry, she not only turned her loving heart to him, but constantly sought his advice as to her plans. It would not be exaggerating to say they had a partnership in all her undertakings, marked by a mutual love and confidence all too rare in the harassed life of the guardian. They kept in close touch, a flow of letters and cables apprising him of her plans, her needs, her victories, her requests for guidance, and his unfailing answers, giving encouragement and advice. She turned to him at all times, unhesitatingly making requests of him, which she felt were in the interests of the faith. The guardian was well aware of both the purity of her motives and her good judgment, and almost invariably acceded to these requests, which ranged from letters of encouragement to individuals to cabled messages to figures of great prominence. Love begets love. Martha's great love for Shoghi Effendi called forth his love and his responses, the way the capacity of a diamond to reflect light captures its rays and casts them back brilliantly. This is Martha Root, about whom we just read. And Ruhia Rabbani says, Martha Root was firmly convinced that in her possession was the most priceless gem the world had ever seen, the message of Baha'u'llah. She believed that in showing this gem and offering it to anyone, king or peasant, she was conferring the greatest bounty upon him he could ever receive. It was this proud conviction that enabled her, a woman of no wealth or social prestige, plain, dowdily dressed, and neither a great scholar nor an outstanding intellectual, to meet more kings, queens, princes, and princesses, presidents, and men of distinction, fame and prominence, and tell them about the Baha'i faith than any other Baha'i in the history of this cause has ever done. And again, Shoghi Effendi used to remark that out of his sufferings, something always seemed to be born. He would go through these ordeals by fire, for indeed he seemed to fairly burn with suffering, and then some rain from heaven in the form of good news would shower upon him and help to revive him. A letter that Martha Root wrote to Ella Goodall Cooper on the 19th of February, 1926. A passage from that letter: next Bucharest, the American minister said I could not see the Queen Marie of Romania, but I wrote her a letter and sent her Abdul Baha's picture and Dr. Esselman's book. And that book is still available today. It's a wonderful introductory book on the Baha'i faith called Baha'u'llah and the New Era. This was what Queen Marie looked like in 1926. And right after Queen Marie met with Martha Root, she submitted an article to the North American Newspaper Alliance that would distribute her articles around the world. And here is one of those articles that was published in the Toronto Daily Star in 1926, where she talks about the Baha'i faith. Here's a beautiful photograph of Queen Marie reading. And this is from the Queen's diary on Sunday, February 21st, 1926. So that is today's date, very special. And she writes from Cotrocen, went to English church with Ileana, that was her youngest daughter, but it was what I would call a poor service. I really pray better at home with my Baha'u'llah books and teaching, which have brought me such a message lately. The message, in fact, that I have always been waiting for, that has become a joy and comfort to me and has at last brought God quite close, quite near. For the first time, I have felt religion. Every principle of Baha'u'llah is acceptable to me, understandable, of greatest and perfect help. All my hazy desires and thoughts have been suddenly made concrete by this teaching. My whole soul answers it, feels it to be the teaching. I am also giving it to Ileana, for she too is a great searcher and astonishingly open and waiting for truth. And then she wrote a letter to her friend, Loie Fuller, on this same day. Lately, a great hope has come to me from one Abdul Baha. I have found in his and in his father Baha'u'llah's message of faith all my yearning for real religion satisfied. If you ever hear of Baha'is or of the Baha'i movement, which is known in America, you will know what that is, what I mean. These books have strengthened me beyond belief, and I am now ready to die any day, full of hope, but I pray God not to take me away yet, for I still have a lot of work to do. Here is a page from a letter that Queen Marie wrote to Shoghi Effendi. And in the middle of this letter, she says, with bowed head, I recognize that I too am but an instrument in greater hands and rejoice in the knowledge. My second book, which should be ready soon in English, which is already available in Romanian, is called An Instrument in Greater Hands. Shoghi Effendi, when he learned about Martha Root's audience with Queen Marie, wrote in a letter on 24 April 1926, I am thrilled by your account about the Queen. Queen Marie and Princess Ileana went to Palestine, and Shoghi Effendi had extended to them an invitation to visit the Baha'i World Center, which is located in Haifa, and Akka in Palestine, which was then Palestine, is now Israel. And here is the invitation, which was sent to the Queen, who was already traveling towards Palestine. And Shoghi Effendi says, family of Abdul Baha, join me in renewing the expression of our loving and heartfelt invitation to your gracious majesty and Her Royal Highness Princess Ileana to visit his home in Haifa. Your Majesty's acceptance to visit Baha'u'llah's shrine and prison city of Akka will, apart from its historic significance, be a source of immeasurable strength, joy, and hope to the silent sufferers of the faith throughout the East. Our fondest love, prayers, and best wishes for your Majesty's happiness and welfare. Unfortunately, this visit was prevented by both the Romanian and British governments because it would not be proper in their eyes for a queen to associate with a religion that was not well known in the world at that time. Here's a photograph of Shoghi Effendi and his aunt, the sister of Baha'u'llah, who had extended this invitation to the queen and had been waiting for her and received no news until the Romanian minister in Cairo, Philip Lahovari, cabled Shoghi Effendi saying Her Majesty regrets that not passing through Palestine, she will not be able to visit you. Unfortunately, this was a well-documented lie, because Queen Marie actually did sail into Haifa, and they drove her very quickly out of Haifa to what was then known as Transjordan, and then she visited Egypt as well. Here's a photograph from a newspaper in Egypt of the queen and her youngest daughter, Ileana, and a picture of her visiting the Sphinx. I mentioned at the beginning that there was a connection between Queen Marie's time in Malta and the Baha'i faith. This is a photograph of Lillian Barron McNeil, who was a childhood friend of Queen Marie and her sisters. Lillian became a Baha'i. Her husband, General McNeil, was posted to Palestine, and when they retired, they loved Palestine so much that they decided that they were going to settle in Palestine. And they went around the countryside looking for a home to settle in, and they found what they thought was the most suitable home. And it turned out that it was a home that Baha'u'llah had lived in, which is known as Mazrae. So they lived there for a while. Lillian, as a Baha'i, came in contact often with Shoghi Effendi, and Queen Marie and Lillian reestablished their connection after many, many years. And Lillian told her about being a Baha'i. And in one of her letters, she writes, "It was indeed nice to hear from you and to think that you are, of all things, living in Haifa." Sorry, this is from Marie to Lillian. And are, like I am, a follower of the Baha'i teachings. And we had planned, Ileana, my youngest daughter, and I, to visit the holy graves. Shoghi Effendi was expecting me. Then there were political intrigues. It was after the death of my husband, and people were being nasty with me, and I had, under pressure, to give it up. And it was a great sorrow to me for more reasons than one. Yes, certainly it interests me that you are living in that special house. The teachers so loved flowers, and being English, I can imagine what a lovely garden you have made in that Eastern climate. With much love, Marie, please give Shoghi Effendi a warm greeting from me. Here is Marie's handwriting. It was an appreciation of the Baha'i faith, which she sent to Shoghi Effendi. The envelope is on the right-hand side. This was published in the Baha'i yearbook known as the Baha'i World, which Shoghi Effendi put together and edited. Here's one she wrote in 1935, recognizing that the Baha'i faith would indeed bring peace to the world. And this was another appreciation in 1936. And she says, more than ever today, When the world is facing such a crisis of bewilderment and unrest, must we stand firm in faith, seeking that which binds together instead of tearing asunder? To those searching for light, the Baha'i teachings offer a star which will lead them to deeper understanding, to assurance, peace, and goodwill with all men. I think we would probably all agree that this message is as appropriate today as it was in 1936. And it's wonderful that she encourages people to come together. This was the last official photograph taken of Queen Marie. And another older photograph. And this was her funeral procession. And she is buried in this church. It's an Orthodox church in a place called Curtea de Argeș, where all of the kings of Romania are buried. And this is significant. In 2011, the great-granddaughter of Queen Marie of Romania, Princess Helen, wrote, "For me, the message of this great faith is as important today as it has always been. In an increasingly secular society where market forces, rampant consumerism, and selfishness are considered virtuous, the Baha'i faith offers an alternative way of living, rooted in the propagation of justice, unity, and the establishing of peace to bring about prosperity and collective well-being. Historically, messengers of such radicalism have been considered subversives. This seems to have been true of Abdu'l-Baha, who, because of his deep faith in God's goodness and guidance, spent most of his life in exile. Lesser men would have become bitter, separated from their homeland, but that was not so of Abdu'l-Baha. He chose a different path and became a great ambassador of peace and justice, and a welcome guest among all peoples of goodwill and faith. Such people are unique, inspirational, and challenging, and we need to hear their messages of hope." So it was, of course, Abdu'l-Baha's message to Martha Root, which encouraged her to contact Princess Helen's great-grandmother, Queen Marie of Romania, in 1926. And the Universal House of Justice, which is the governing body of the Baha'i faith, has its permanent seat on Mount Carmel in Haifa, Israel. This is the area one traverses to arrive at their council chamber. At the far end of this corridor, their council chamber is on the right-hand side, is a portrait of Abdu'l-Baha. And on the left-hand side here in the foreground is a portrait of Queen Marie, the first crowned head to accept the message of Baha'u'llah. And a portrait hangs to the left of this portrait of Queen Marie of the Malietoa Tanumafili II of Western Samoa, who is also deceased, who was the second royal to accept the message of Baha'u'llah. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'll be happy to try to answer any questions if anybody has any.
I see Emmanuel has raised his hand. Emmanuel, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. Actually, I have a number of questions. I understand that the daughter-in-law of Queen Mary, Princess Helen of Greece, she actually pretty recently was awarded the title of Righteous Among Nations from the State of Israel, which is a very high title awarded by the State of Israel to any non-Jewish person who has worked for saving Jewish people, especially during the Second World War. I understand that Princess Helena of Greece, who was the daughter-in-law of Queen Mary, actually did a tremendous work during the Second World War to save practically the majority of the Jewish population who was living in Romania. So, and we know from some writings that Princess Helene too was very much aware of the Baha'i faith, because apparently we have some writings saying that when Martha Ruth was sending Baha'i writings to the royal family of Romania, Princess Ileana, who was the daughter of Queen Mary, was also very much interested by the Baha'i faith. And at one point, the writings or the letters said that Prince Helen of Greece was stealing the Baha'i books from the library of Princess Ileana. So I was wondering if Princess Helen, when she was engaged in saving all those Jewish people out of Romania, was inspired by the Baha'i faith. That's one question. And then regarding the great-granddaughter of Queen Mary, Margarita of Romania, who after many years of exile now lives in Romania. She, for many years, she had some prominent positions in the United Nations, I think in Geneva. So, and we know that Princess Helen of Greece paid for much of Margarita's studies later to become really one of the main officers in the United Nations. All that, I'm wondering if that was inspired by the Baha'i writings. And then my last question is related to Princess Ileana, the daughter of Queen Mary, who apparently was also very well informed of the Baha'i writings. And later in her life, she had a very complicated life apparently, but at the end of her life, she moved to the United States and found it established an Orthodox monastery, actually not so far from the Northern Virginia Baha'i Center near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I was wondering, how Princess Ileana, being so close to the Baha'i faith for a number of years, then she switched to the Orthodox religion, founding really a major institution of the Orthodox religion in the United States. So how you would understand that switch from the Baha'i faith to the Orthodox institution? So those are my three questions. If you have any answers, that would be very interesting, I think. Thank you so much.
Sure, Emmanuel. I have to be honest with you, I've never heard of any connection of Queen Helen. So I'm talking about Queen Helen, who was the wife of King Carol II and the mother of King Michael. I have never heard of any connection of hers with the Baha'i faith. I do know that she did an amazing job of assisting Jews in Romania, and certainly deserves all the credit she can get for that. I'll be happy to try and find out more about that, but since I've never heard of any connection, I wouldn't be able to respond to your question as to her inspiration for assisting the Jews. as far as Margaret is concerned, Princess Margaret, who now lives in Romania, she was indeed at the United Nations for a while. She does know about the Baha'i faith, but she even, there are photographs of her visiting with her husband the Baha'i temple in India, but I don't think that she has any, I don't think she's shown any particular interest in the Baha'i faith. As far as Princess Ileana was concerned, you know, her evolution was quite interesting in the sense that she was indeed very interested in the Baha'i faith. At the time, her mother was investigating the faith. However, my feeling was, as I was doing research about this subject, that, you know, it's one thing when you are investigating the Baha'i faith and you are able to be active in a Baha'i community and meet other Baha'is and really be able to make a contribution to both religious and social projects. I think that because of Ileana's age, she was very young. So her mother's learning about the Baha'i faith came when she was probably in her late teens. And she, at the time, was very active, for example, with the Romanian Girl Guides, the Young Women's Christian Association. These were all activities where she could do something specific. Whereas the Baha'i faith at that time, at least, had really no framework in which she could be active. You know, there was no Baha'i community in Romania at the time. There was a handful of believers that had become interested and active in the Baha'i faith through Martha Root. But there was really no connection. I mean, Queen Marie herself had only 9 meetings with Martha Root, and she met a few other Baha'is. But, you know, these we're talking about, you know, maybe a couple of hours each time. And so other than what they were reading themselves, their connection with the Baha'i faith was really very limited. And Ileana went on after she left Romania. So she herself had been obliged to be baptized as Romanian Orthodox, because this was stipulated in the Constitution for all of the children of Marie and Ferdinand. She married Archduke Anton of Habsburg, who was Catholic. And while she was in Austria, that was where they made their home initially, she became very interested in Christian Science. And then when she emigrated to the United States, she decided that she wanted to somehow become active in the Romanian Orthodox Church. So she established a convent, and she became its mother superior. Her son, Dominic, who I mentioned, is a friend of mine, often thought that she was quite, you know, a little bit wishy-washy in her religious thinking. And So, I mean, I don't know that we can ever really judge people's sincerity, but I don't think that she had the same understanding as Queen Marie did of the message of Baha'u'llah. Well, I hope I answered your questions.
There's
Thank you so much.
Sure.
there's a question in the chat box asking which languages did Queen Marie speak and or understand?
Okay, so so she of course knew English, and for example, her diary was written mostly in English, but she knew French and German as well. So sometimes she would write in both of those languages in her diary. She knew Romanian. I don't know. I'm not sure how good her Russian was, because obviously her mother was Russian. Yes, those were the only languages that she knew.
And we have some hands raised. Roya, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question or make your comment?
Yes, hello, Allah. Thank you
Hello.
very much for a beautiful talk. My question is, I did not understand finally, did the Queen Marie attended the shrines when she came to Palestine, or did she finally meet the guardian ever? And the third question is, if at her funeral, was there any representative from Baha'i Faith or a tablet from the guardian read or not? Thank you.
Okay, so the first question, Queen Marie never did meet Shoghi Effendi. She did not actually return to Palestine after they took her from the boat in Haifa to what is now Jordan, because from there she traveled to Egypt and then back to Cyprus. Her daughter, however, Ileana, continued the Middle Eastern tour, and she returned to Haifa, and she writes about standing on Mount Carmel and looking down on the shrine of the Bab and feeling very sad that she was not able to visit that shrine and meet Shoghi Effendi. I'm sure if Shoghi Effendi had been aware that she was there, he would have certainly opened the shrine for her, but there was no communication between them. And I can't remember what were your other questions?
At her funeral, was there any Baha'i representative or any tablet by the guardian?
Yes, there was no Baha'i representative at her funeral, but Shoghi Effendi did send condolences to the family.
Okay, and Sherry and House Freiberg, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. We've had many evenings here as firesides about Queen Mary of Romania. Mm-hmm. So this question, I know that Violet Nakhjavani mentioned once that, who was this? The daughter-in-law who visited the Temple of India, Indian house of worship? And she was granddaughter.
Yeah.
And the friends were not very careful and diplomatic and put the question to her, are you a Baha'i? And then she denied it. Well,
I think that was the daughter, Elaine, when she went to America. That's what, so Mr. Nakhjavani had said, that Violet had said that the Baha'is of America were warned, please be very careful. with I think when Elena went to America, and leave everything in the hands of the National Spiritual Assembly. But some unwise Baha'i said, well, you know, your mother was, you know, from what we understand, she was Baha'i, and she was really rather offended and said, no, my mother was a Christian, something of that nature. But I don't know, there may be others who know the information more accurately. But anyway, sometimes we're very unwise, you know, that there's a time for everything.
Yes, so actually, you know, the question, certainly for Baha'is, I think there should be no doubt that Queen Marie accepted the message of Baha'u'llah, because in the opening statement of the Kitab-i-Aqdas, there is a description of what a believer is. It's somebody who accepts Baha'u'llah as the manifestation of God for this time, and who teaches the Baha'i faith, you know, who teaches the message of Baha'u'llah. And she certainly did both of those things. Now, you know, this question of faith is something very mysterious. And I think that it's very difficult to judge who is a Baha'i, who is not a Baha'i. There are people who call themselves Baha'is and who may not be practicing their faith in the way that Baha'u'llah has asked. And then there are others who may not be, you know, active Baha'is for a variety of reasons. But, you know, ultimately, for any man, when they pass away, Baha'is believe that our soul continues into other worlds of God after the death of a person, and will be judged by God. And none of us, whether we call ourselves Baha'is or Christians or Muslims, will know until we have that meeting in that next world. Our soul in that next world will know whether we have or not done a good job, as we have been enjoined by God through the manifestations that he sends periodically to this world. Everybody is free to decide whether or not they believe that Queen Marie was a believer. I personally believe that she was. I'm sure that she was welcomed with open arms in the next world as a believer in the message of Baha'u'llah and a promoter of that message. She did so very, very regularly and widely. And I think that because Shoghi Effendi talked about her being a believer, we must see that as the authority, because Shoghi Effendi was the representative of this divine faith during her lifetime.
No, for us, there is no doubt, only about the descendants of hers.
Yes, her descendants, there are many descendants who claim that she wasn't a Baha'i. That's the way they understand things. And but you know, Princess Helen, whose letter I read at the end, who is the great granddaughter, she does acknowledge that her mother had a relationship with the Baha'i faith, and I believe that there are other descendants of Queen Marie who have actually become Baha'is. I think they live in Germany, so you know, they would probably feel differently than some. But ultimately, it really doesn't matter what anybody thinks. You know, it's and you know, I mean, obviously, I'm saying that she was a believer in Baha'u'llah's message, but other people may not feel the same way, and that's their right to.
Now, again, in this case, we see that Baha'u'llah said, in this religion, nobody has a right or automatically gets this bounty of accepting this faith. And in this case, a queen accepts Baha'u'llah, and his children, her children, unfortunately, seems that, they were denied this, or they denied themselves of this bounty. So we see that trait that Baha'u'llah says everybody has to do it for themselves.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, I mean, that's definitely true. And we were having a discussion last night at another meeting about, Queen Victoria, and just think, I mean, Baha'u'llah took the time to write a tablet to Queen Victoria and tell her that he was the representative of God on earth, and this is what the kings should do, and she didn't do anything. I mean, it's unfortunate that these kings and rulers just continued to go on doing what they had been doing forever. And
Roya has another question. So Roya, if you would like to unmute yourself, I think we have time for one last question.
Yes, thank you very much. My question is there any record of discussion in the court of the Queen in regards to losing the status for burial in the mausoleum if she if she doesn't deny her faith to Baha'u'llah? Was there any threat by the clergy around her that they telling her, if you do not deny your faith, you will not be worthy of be buried in this mausoleum, because that is a big status, and it's very hard for queens and kings to get rid of those status. I mean, can you believe you are a queen one day and the next day you are buried in the regular cemetery? That's awful.
so
I want to know if there was any record of that. Thanks.
no, there was nothing like that. Queen Marie actually did not want to be buried where she is buried. She did not particularly like that church, but that was where they bury the royals, and so she had no choice. So knowing this, she had stipulated that her heart be removed from her body when she died. She stipulated this in her will and testament, and that was done. And she asked that it be buried in Bulgaria. It was an area that at the time belonged to Romania along the Black Sea at a place called Balchik. And they had put it in a beautiful case, small case, and it was buried on the property, her property in Balchik. It was removed during the Second World War because Romania lost that part of the country to the Bulgarians. And it was then moved to Bucharest. It stayed in a museum for many, many decades. And it was not long ago buried in a niche at Castle Bran in central Romania. So yeah, but there was no request to deny her faith by anybody. They didn't approve of her publicly talking about accepting the message of Baha'u'llah, but there was never an ultimatum made. And I honestly, knowing Queen Marie the way I do from everything that she wrote, I don't believe that she would ever have acceded to that. She did accede to not meeting Shoghi Effendi because she didn't feel that she had a choice. but I don't think she would have ever denied her faith.
Friends, we're at 12 o'clock. We'd like to thank you very much for your enlightening talk on Queen Marie. I've always heard of her, but never heard any of the details. We invite everyone to join us again next week at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our speaker will be Dr. Nazil Ghanea, who is a professor at Oxford University and a director of human rights. And she will speak to us in what ways can human rights be considered religious. So we invite you to join us. It will be the same Zoom link, same password. And once again, we want to thank Ms. Marcus for that wonderful talk on Queen Marie, and hopefully we can have you back again sometime. At this time, we will conclude with a closing prayer.
Where there is love, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, nothing is too much trouble. Where there is love, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, nothing is too much trouble. There is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. Oh, where there is love, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble. Nothing is too much trouble. Where there is love, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble. Nothing is too much trouble. There is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. Oh, nakukukona, kona utando. Akukho kuyikinga, akukho kuyikinga. Nakukukona, kona utando. Akukho kuyikinga, akukho kuyikinga. Kunesikhathi, kunesikhathi, kunesikhathi. Oh, lapho kukhona, khona uthando. Akukho kuyinkinga, akukho kuyinkinga. Lapho kukhona, khona uthando. Akukho kuyinkinga, akukho kuyinkinga. Kunesikhathi, kunesikhathi, kunesikhathi. Oh, there is always